Welcome back to Growing Up Grieving, where grief is complicated, humor is necessary, and speaking your griefy truth is always encouraged. I'm your host, Cait Medugno, and we're back for season 2. Woo! You will notice that I am not alone, if you're watching, that is. And that's because I now have a co-host. Please meet my cousin, Alyssa Shepard.
Hello. I'm Alyssa. I am so happy to be here with you and Cait for season 2. We've got some amazing conversations ahead, and I just can't wait to join.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. And if you're new here, Growing Up Grieving is a place where we talk honestly about grief, the messy, the complicated, sometimes the funny parts. Those are the parts that I know Alyssa and I really live for, and basically how loss shapes the way that we live. So last season, it was a lot about me sharing my own personal grief stories alongside with my sisters. And I also learned a lot from some really amazing guests who came on who have lived through loss. And that was kind of the whole point. I wanted to find out how the heck they did it. I'm still trying to figure it out.
We still have some powerful interviews with guests, but we're also making space for real, honest conversations between the two of us about our favorite griefy topics.
Yes. And because grief is different for everyone, every conversation this season will include a little something special. We'll be pulling a Speak Your Griefy Truth card when we have an additional guest on, which is basically a random question that is going to help us dig deeper into how we're really feeling about grief, healing, and life after loss. And when it's just Alyssa and I, you can expect that we're going to be playing a different game, a griefy version of Would You Rather? And we will be playing that today.
Oh, boy.
Mm-hmm.
Plus, we're bringing you into the conversation. We're going to be sharing some of your stories, your grief wins, and your reflections.
Absolutely. So whether you're grieving right now, whether you're supporting somebody who is, or whether you're just curious about what grief actually feels like, and maybe you're awkward and strange like me, and you love the afterlife like my cousin Alyssa and I, then, I don't know, maybe you're in the right place. We're so glad you're here, and welcome to season 2.
Woohoo!
Ooh, I keep holding up my fingers, everybody.
I know, me
but they
too.
kept
Spirit fingers.
Yeah, but they keep getting... There we go. Season 2. It's a proper 2. All right, so let's get into it. In today's show, we are going to get to know Alyssa as she shares parts of her grief story with us. And and as we go along, you're going to notice that we have a bit of a different structure in the show's format, a little different from last season. So let us know how much you love it. Okay. Yes. Right. For season 2, we're really going to try to make it easy so that you know what to expect from every show whenever you turn us on. So consistency, which is my nemesis, is key. Okay. And we're going to be really honing in on that this season. Alyssa is more timely than me. Right? Right, Alyssa? But wait, okay. Before we hear more from Miss Alyssa, we need to hear from our long-standing sponsor, which is Sensible Home Solutions. And we are going to give a quick segment as well called Listener Feedback. Thank you very much for being our sponsor, Sensible. Woo! If you're interested in sponsoring the show, by the way, this is a good thing to point out. Just send us a message at info@growingupgrieving.com, or we're on Instagram, we're on Facebook, and TikTok. Yeah, so we are everywhere. So moving along to our listener feedback segment. So that's a new segment in the show I want to highlight. This is a new segment with Alyssa, and this is going to be a segment of the show where we read some comments and or questions in the future, okay, from you guys, our listeners, because we want to make the show more interactive. And I think it's just a lot more fun when we can hear some feedback and talk to our listeners. So today I'm just going to share a couple comments about Alyssa joining that I saw on the socials. One listener commented, obsessed, can't wait to listen. And I'm just like, me too. How much can I like that? Another listener commented, amazing. I can't wait for it to come out. So basically everybody is super excited and jazzercised by you coming on to the show, Alyssa. What do you think of all the excitement regarding the show and you're joining?
I am just so excited. I'm a little nervous.
Yeah.
This is my first time podcasting, so bear with me, everyone. Please be kind. But yeah, I'm excited to spend time with you. I'm excited to, get to know the listeners and just be along for the ride. Yeah.
I'm very excited that you're here. And I do want to give a quick shout out to one of my longstanding listeners. This listener lost her mom in her teens, and she's currently going to college, and she's going to school for mental health, which I think is so inspiring. She's a young adult grief advocate. She really wants to help others with grief too, and inspired the same. We're on the same mission here, and she's just the sweetest girl. She's just really nice, and we chat here and there. And I just wanted, I'm not going to say her name, but I just want her to know that I really appreciate you. The pod, the connections, and just it's really just nice to have feedback from someone. And I'm sad that you're in this club, but I'm glad you're here at the same time. All right, so we're gonna move on. Alyssa, my love.
Hello.
Hello. So I want to provide a quick update real quick.
Okay.
And that's about Mark. Okay, so my brother-in-law Mark, my sister Rachel's husband passed away, which is my sister Rachel is also Alyssa's cousin. And basically Mark passed away on April 11th. And he died from bile duct cancer. And he leaves behind my sister and their 2 kids. And I'm sharing this because I've talked about Mark here on the podcast before, a couple different episodes. And if you recall, listeners, long-standing listeners, Rachel was going to be like my co-host last season, but Mark's diagnosis happened right around the same time, and it just clearly was not appropriate for her to join. She had a lot of other things going on. But Mark was just amazing. His service is beautiful. His family's amazing. I wish this didn't happen, but I wanted to give you guys an update. And please just think of Rachel and the kids and say a prayer for her if you're into that. Yeah, definitely. So we're going to move on from that now. And Alyssa, I know that you've basically passed the test and you have verified your grief credentials.
Oh, goodness.
But what is your story? What is your story? Because I know that our listeners are going to want to know about you. Obviously, they know a lot about me. But could you share a little about yourself and basically your grief story?
So, yeah, where do I start?
I know. Where do you start?
So basically, like Cait said, our moms were sisters. They were 2 out of the 4 aunties that we had who have passed. RIP to all those beautiful ladies. We were so lucky to have them and spend the time we did with them. I grew up with Cait kind of on the Mass, New Hampshire border in a town called Newburyport. It's a little seaside town, so beautiful. I was really lucky to grow up there.
One of my favorite places.
I know.
It is honestly, and it's because of the connection to our family, for sure.
Yep. I mean, our grandparents were there, so yeah. And basically my family dynamic was that I was primarily with my mom and my younger brother. My parents got divorced when we were little. My dad was very much in our lives, but I was raised by a single mama. And I always refer to myself as the oldest sister, which is, I guess, kind of confusing because I had an older brother that passed away. So I was supposed to be sandwiched in between 2 boys and be the middle child. And that's kind of, our preface into grief, the start of my grief. So I was introduced to grief at a very young age. The best way that I can verbalize it is kind of growing up in the shadow of grief. The interesting thing about losing a sibling so young, regardless of how much time you actually get to spend with them, you still grow up in the shadow of the trauma of their death, right? Like, it's just always there. I really don't ever remember a time where there wasn't this traumatic, huge loss that I had that was part of my family narrative. So, my parents were trying to raise my brother and and they were trying to heal themselves. And, I think that loss really impacted the way that they parented. And, secondary to that, it impacted my brother and I and the people that we are today. you know?
Yeah. And, we had touched on that briefly. I knew from my own experience how I felt about growing up grieving.
Right.
And you and mine was sort of an interpretation because I watched my mother like slowly die for 37 years. But yours, like you actually like you had somebody in your immediate family, your brother pass, and I never associated that with you.
Yeah.
And I think it's because I didn't know Joshua either.
Yeah, and so he, I was born in 84 and he passed in 85. And, we can circle back to that story as well,
Yes.
if you want to.
I know I interrupted you.
Yeah, no, that's fine. But yeah, I mean, it really impacted my childhood. It really, I didn't realize that I've kind of filtered myself my entire life until I was gathering my thoughts for this podcast, and kind of trying to do some homework and put all the pieces together. But, it's something as simple as someone saying, "Oh, how many siblings do you have?" And that seems like such an easy question, right? But for me, it was really complicated and I was so little. And, I think that I filtered myself a lot and I didn't even realize I was doing it,
How did you act as a child? I obviously know how I interacted with you, but I know that that's different from what you feel and how you act around people. Like, do you recall being young and feeling those feelings? Or was it until later that you were like able to be like, oh, that's what that was?
I think that it was a little bit of both. I don't know. I feel like I kind of had an identity crisis because I like really flip-flopped back and forth with kind of saying at a young age, well, my brother was disabled, to I'm the oldest sister and I just have a younger brother, and I've done that my whole life. I still sometimes do that.
Yeah.
So,
because it's easier, I'm sure, to be able to just tell a stranger or somebody what they want to hear.
Yeah.
Rather than explain the truth.
Right. And not, I think that it made me incredibly empathetic and really hyper aware of other people's emotions, like how I was making people feel. Right. Yeah. Because those stories are uncomfortable. And, I'm not going to say, oh, well, I have two brothers, but one of them died in this horrific, tragic accident. And, that's just not, you kind of pick and choose who are your safe people, right? Like, who do I feel safe telling this story to? And, you almost assess people like right off the bat, like, do I think this person has the capacity to handle this story? Or do I think it's appropriate to tell this story in whatever setting that I'm in? So
yeah, that's a lot.
It's complicated, right? So, I mean, that was my first introduction to grief. I never knew what it was like to not feel this tremendous loss, to not feel like a piece of me was missing, to not be aware that my parents were healing and they were hurting, and it was a little bit hush-hush too within the family. And I think that you could probably attest to that as well. People, the family didn't really talk about it, but they kind of talked about it. And my mom, gave us tidbits, but not everything. But, we were at the gravesite every year, for anniversaries and stuff like that. So that was kind of my first grief. And then, throughout high school, I had lost several close friends at high school and in my early 20s, several close friends to addiction. The week before I got married, actually, one of my exes died. So that was a really secular grief for me as well. And then that brings us to my mom and our aunts, and then my mom. And, that was a huge grief for me as well. I don't know if you want to get into that now or.
Yeah, what if it's just, a casual conversation.
I know, right?
We're just talking about all of our deep, dark feelings and all of our personal information. It's fine. Don't worry about it. But But yeah, you Auntie has been gone, 2 years?
Yep.
2 years now.
January of 2023. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess you know what? Why don't we go back and hear about Josh, and then
Okay.
we can talk about your mom.
Okay.
All right. Unless you need a breather.
No, I'm fine.
We're good. We're gonna shake it.
All right. So Josh was, my brother was a really kind of horrific tragedy that happened. He was a healthy little blue-eyed, blonde-haired boy. My dad always describes him as, being inquisitive and always being so happy. And as the story goes, at 2 years old, he was with a babysitter. They were playing hide and go seek. And he climbed into a toy box to hide. And this would have been in the late 70s. So basically, it was a pretty basic toy box, wooden hinges essentially. And the lid slammed on his head and it cut off the oxygen to his brain. So he had tragic brain hypoxia, which ultimately left him, in a debilitating state with severe brain damage. So
It's terrible.
Yeah, it's just a horrific story. So he passed at 10 years old. So yeah,
It's hard.
That's the story.
So that's gotta, without getting into the weeds of things, like that's gotta be so hard on your parents.
Oh yeah. I can.
And you just said that you were born the year after?
Yeah, the year after. Yep.
So
yeah, so new baby.
So I guess did that
baby.
put stress on you, I should say. That must have put a lot of stress on you unknowingly?
Yeah. Yeah, it put a lot of stress on me unknowingly, and then kind of, I have always felt guilty, right? Like you talk about survivor's guilt a lot.
Yeah.
I just kind of feel like, they had this new baby who was difficult. I was colicky and lactose intolerant, and I was always crying. My mom always said, like, I was always crying. And, throughout my entire life, I just have felt so bad.
You're just always crying. Why are you always crying?
I know,
Alyssa?
right? So
God.
I'm sorry, but
jeez. In reality, it's me.
Yeah, but she was trying to grieve. Like they were both trying to grieve, and I was just an infant. And obviously, I know it's not my fault. But I did feel like, wow, what a burden I must have been for them at that time.
It's hard.
I know, it's so sad.
Yeah, it's no one's fault.
No, of course,
it's not your parents' fault. It's not yours. And I think the young mind to process.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard. It's hard as an adult. So it's even harder when we're younger, I think.
Yeah, it's just sad, and like I said, I think it really affected the way that they parented. My mom, was very controlling and smothering, and I love her more than anything. But how could you not want to be in control all the time when you lose a child? And not to sickness or something, that's out of your control, even though this was out of their control as well. This was like such a horrific accident that occurred. And, she didn't give me a lot of like vulnerable moments, but, one of her memories of that day was her leaving and him crying in the window, and I just, to be an adult and to put myself in her place at this point, it just breaks my heart for her that she had to live through that, and my father as well.
That's just horrible and painful, and nobody should have to go through that.
Yeah, yeah. And this is somebody that I didn't know, but there's like such a connection and such a like I'm so trauma bonded, and this is my brother. This is somebody that could have been in my life. He could have been my protector. You know what I mean? Like I could have been in the middle child position. My parents ended up getting a divorce long after he passed, and I think that probably a little bit of that attributed to it.
I know
But-
you're an excellent big sister. Again, I know you're not the oldest, but I know that you are.
Right?
And so just, talking to you about this right now, his death must have impacted the way that you are a sister to Eli.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I love him so much. I love my brother so much.
I know you guys are so close too. And I love that too, knowing that.
Yeah.
It's interesting how everything with Joshua kind of plays into the relationships that do remain.
Yeah. Exactly. I mean, this loss, since I can remember, it's this loss that is kind of, been something that I've just had with me, and my family has had with them, and my younger brother has had with him, and it really truly helped define who I am as a human,
Yeah, and it's looking back, like we keep saying, Alyssa and I keep saying to each other, looking back, like you just don't realize until you look back and you explore and you go, oh,
yeah,
that's why I am neurotic, or that's why I
right.
felt compelled to be, the big sister, because I know that you're dependable.
Yeah.
All these things they all add to it.
Yeah, they definitely do.
So I have a question for you.
Yes.
How did you keep his spirit alive in your family? Or I know, again, that was a different time, so talking about those things wasn't cool. It wasn't the thing to do. So I don't know how much you shared, but like, how did you learn about him or little things about him that you do know?
So the strange thing is, it's not that we didn't talk, like Josh, we talked about Josh. I think that it's more that we didn't talk about the accident, right? Like Josh was kind of, Josh was definitely in our everyday lives. It was like, okay, we're going to go see Josh. So we would always see Josh, on his birthday, we would go see Josh. On Easter, my mom loved to go see him on Easter.
When you say go see him, you mean
go visit his grave? Yeah, go visit his grave. Yep.
Yeah, that's something we like to do in our family.
Yeah, so that was actually, that was just kind of common. And, I would always try to do that. I would, try to take her on Mother's Day if that's what she wanted. I would always offer to, go visit Josh. And, my dad moved out of Newburyport, but whenever he came back to either, see Eli and I, my brother, or, was just in the area, he would always go visit Josh too. So he was very much in our lives, but I think that it was more like talking about the death, like acknowledging the death. Like it was very natural for us to go and visit Josh, right? But it was like not.
But you just didn't talk about why you were there.
Right. Like you just,
like
and you were little. Like we never had like a sit down conversation that I remember where, my mom was like, okay, your brother died. This is how he died. It just, it was just like, oh, we're going to visit my brother at the cemetery, because that's what we do. And it makes mom happy, Yeah, it was just this normal heavy grief that I mean, I guess that her grief projected onto me, and yeah.
Yeah. Well, loss will do that to you.
I guess so. It's a trickle down,
Yeah, it'll do it. I do want to touch on something you said about your mom being smothering, I don't know what you experienced, but I do know that I have a 13-year-old daughter and I am crazy with her, and I don't want to do the same. I don't want to smother her, but I am, and it's out of fear, Alyssa, because I've lost so many people that I don't want to lose anybody else.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, how does that make you feel, knowing that she was that way, most likely because she was just trying to, like, make sure you were okay.
She just wanted me to be okay, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is something that I've, like, had to revisit a lot, because and try to put myself in her shoes. Because at the time, in my teenage years when I was kind of trying to figure out who I was and that's what we do, right? Like as adolescents, you have to kind of like let them make mistakes and, develop their own identity and personality and, give them the tools to make good choices. With my mom, I felt like I was never allowed to make any mistakes. It,
That
really, I kind of felt like I always had to be perfect. And I think that really kind of caused me to even act out a little bit, even push the boundaries more, right? And if we could have just sat down and had a conversation like, Alyssa, I lost your brother and I don't want you to make these mistakes. And I'm so, so terribly worried that something might happen to you. And this is why, I'm saying no, no, no. But there was never like open dialogue. Like it was always, there wasn't like, let's talk about drinking or let's talk about sex or let's talk about, drugs, right? Or, and sorry to bring up that, or, any of those things. Like it was always like, absolutely not. You're not allowed to do it. There's no is no, and that's how it is, and I think when we want to know why, like, well, why, and we never talked about that. It was just like, mom, no is no, right? So
yeah.
I don't know if did that answer your question a little bit?
Yeah, no, it did.
Yeah, and I think the biggest thing with Josh that I've realized kind of like revisiting grief is that I really, I really filtered myself and I'm, even just like by being on this podcast and kind of speaking my, being my authentic self, I guess I'm trying to be real and, it- you know, tell people the truth about who I am and why I'm this way, I guess. And I think filtering grief is kind of an interesting topic as well. I think that you kind of pick and choose. Sometimes you talk about your people in the past tense, sometimes you talk about them in the present tense. And I feel like you do that for a while after somebody passes and you know with Josh, I realized I've been doing that my whole life by, not saying that I had an older brother or, not getting into that with anybody. So that was kind of an interesting epiphany moment for me when I was gathering my thoughts here.
Yeah, it's for like the lack of a better word, this is very therapeutic, being able to take the time to sit with our grief. That's what we're doing right now because we're talking about it, we're addressing it, and you have to go back in order to go forward. All right, so why don't we move on to more discussion about your mom,
Okay.
Diane.
My mama.
Maybe you can let us know, like, all right, what's her story, and when did things start going with her regarding, her death?
Yeah, so with my mom, she had a couple TIAs in 2020. And basically the doctor said that it could be brain shrinkage from having these TIAs, or it could be potential like early onset dementia. That's what the brain shrinkage was. So
that must have been like not fun to just to even get that news.
Yeah, and I found out about it, of course, after she got her MRI, because she was like still in my early 30s and my mid 30s, all the way up until really the time she died. There was very much like the mother child dynamic between us. I mean, she just she was just always, we never really transitioned into like that best friend dynamic that you kind of transition into when you um, become an adult with your mom. She just always mothered me. So she didn't tell me about the MRI until after, and then we noticed that she was kind of declining. She was walking slower. She kind of developed a little bit of a word aphasia where, she couldn't get her words out. She would be trying to say something, but could not say the word. She ended up moving in with my little brother in the middle of the pandemic. So, we kind of got a little bit more of, you see your parents on the weekends, or you go out to lunch with them, or, you spend some time with them here and there. But I think like having her move home with Eli and I were really kind of like, oh my goodness, like what is going on with mom? She was walking a lot slower. We kind of attributed that to the loss of her eyesight because she had macular degeneration. We didn't really notice the Parkinson shuffle because we were so used to her kind of taking her time.
It makes sense. She was just, if she can't see and you know that about her, then you would,
right?
I would assume that too. And I was with it. I mean, I thought the same.
Yeah. And I kind of beat myself up about that because I was like, I'm a nurse. I should have noticed this, but I didn't. So, yeah, we got her into neurology. She ended up taking meds for that. And, we got her a personal care assistant who was there 3 times a week. And, I was planning my wedding, at that point, and just kind of, doing groceries and taking her to appointments and doing that. She ended up having a fall. I want to say in October. It was right after my wedding. And, then she was really kind of in and out of the hospital from there. She ended up going into a short-term facility. With Parkinson's, you develop Lewy body dementia. So, her word aphasia was, quickly kind of, it was getting worse. We thought she was going to be coming out of short-term care. We had to transition her to long-term care. And then she just it was like she just kind of continued to decline instead of getting better. It's like she started out walking with a walker, and then, she was in a wheelchair, and then she was in this, big long Parkinson's bed because her body was starting to like constrict and she couldn't bend, and Parkinson's is, all death of somebody that you care about is heartbreaking. Parkinson's is, for me, I just felt like I was getting gut punched every time I saw her. It was like, first she was kind of feeding herself, and then she wasn't feeding herself. And then I would go in and, have dinner with her and feed her. And, then they would say, oh, I think we're going to start doing pureed food because she's not really swallowing that well. And, then she slowly lost her speech more and more. She wasn't really able to speak. And, then she was having a hard time swallowing, non-thickened liquids. So it was like every time that you go in there, it's, you'll reset, you'll be like, okay, well, she can't speak, but, she's still saying some things, and she's still, so that you reset, and then you go back in, and then there's something else that you need to reset. You're like, okay, well, now this is, oh, she's not getting out of bed anymore. They only have her in bed. So that's fine. So I'll go and I'll read to her. And, then you'd get like a couple words, and she would laugh if you cracked a joke. And then like slowly that stopped happening. And it was just kind of like, you have to psych yourself up every time you go in, because every single time it's getting worse and worse and worse. It's just like grief over and over and over again.
It's so hard to see them like that.
Yeah.
How long did Auntie decline like that for?
So
do you know how long? I mean, it's not like you're like, I'm thinking about how long my mom was declining.
I know. It was about 1.5 years. Yeah.
Okay. So that's, that's a long time to watch somebody go through all of those changes. And it sounds very much like you became the mom and she became the child.
Yeah. Yeah. It was just so sad. She was a really strong, independent woman. I mean, you know her, she was just like so sophisticated and so beautiful and, so stylish. And
she was hot.
She was a hot ticket.
She was so hot.
That Diane,
She was. And she was a hot ticket.
Yeah. It was so, and she was I always say she was a single mama, and those women are just next level. They are just super women, and I did look at her that way. So it was really hard seeing her, and she was very prideful, prideful and stubborn as well. So I just knew that she was struggling internally because, she couldn't do any of these things by herself anymore. And I just tried to be present, I just didn't want her to be alone. And, I just made myself go in there. And it was awful every time. And I cried, I left and I cried like almost every single time that there was something else that I felt like I had lost, So it was sad. And then, she went into hospice, and she was in hospice for a couple weeks, and then she actively died for 3 days. She was actively dying. And
I don't mean to listen. I'm not laughing that she's dying, please.
No, I know, but it's like, you stubborn.
But I remember I remember having these so it's just kind of funny to say it.
And she would have loved it, all us cousins sitting around, my brother, you guys being there with my brother and I, her getting all the attention, our cousin Debbie was there so much, our cousin Yvonne was there so much, and she would have loved that we were all swooning over her, in those days, instead of just a quick I think that was something that,
And that's another thing and speaking of loss, because she got to a point where you couldn't really communicate with her.
Yeah.
And so there's a difference in between, the differences in the way that people, get sick and everything, obviously.
Yeah.
But, I didn't think of it like that until, recently for you, that it wasn't, I still had my mom and dad around up until they died, and I could communicate, a little bit to the end. It wasn't like what you've experienced, which is like months and years of this not being able to communicate. And that all happened before she ultimately passed.
Yeah.
And I always say that to people about grief, is like, it shows up early. Like, Sometimes it shows up early, and it makes itself known.
Yeah, that's like the anticipatory grief, right? Like,
sure.
It's just like, it's just like knowing that something is going to happen. It's ultimately, this is the path that we're on. Is really, I mean, I remember when the nurse called to kind of suggest hospice, and I was like, oh, no. I was like, no, I don't think so. I'm like, I'll be down in the afternoon to see her. She's probably just having a bad day. Like, I'm not ready to have this conversation, And then I went down and had a conversation, just spent some time with her. And I was like, I think she's okay. And, I called my brother immediately, obviously, and, the decision to move forward with hospice was a decision we both made, because, that was how it was. Like,
that's a responsibility that you guys took on, because, Auntie wasn't married,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so,
and that was really, and I think kind of probably like 2 weeks after, they had suggested hospice, my brother and I, decided to move forward with it. But I mean, just hearing those words, it was so traumatizing and like shocking. I'm gonna cry. I knew, we knew she wasn't doing well. We knew she was declining. We knew that ultimately, like, this is where, her decline was going to lead. But just for somebody to say it out loud to you, it's just so shocking to your nervous system. It's just so sad, and traumatizing, like, no, this is
Yeah.
this is my person. Like, this person isn't, I'm not getting ready to say goodbye. It's like, it's basically giving you an invitation to say goodbye to them. And it's like, nobody's ready to do that. Nobody wants to do that.
I was just calling to check in. Like,
Right.
what?
Like,
no, that's not the answer. I have things like, what? No.
yeah.
Yeah, that's really hard, and I'm just very sorry that you had to go through that.
Aw,
It's
thank
so
you,
hard.
baby.
It's so hard.
Yeah, I remember when she was actively dying, and I actually remember like looking around, and you guys were all there. I think my brother was there too, and I just remember looking around and like being so thankful that we didn't have to sit there alone with her. Yeah. Yeah, it was so hard, and I spent a lot of time alone with her as well, and so did my brother. And I would play her music and stuff in those last couple of days, and talk to her and say all the things that I needed to say. But I do remember like just being so thankful that Eli and I weren't alone. Like, all our cousins just stepped in and held our hands during it.
We do have a really good cousin crew,
We
I have to
do.
say. We have a cousin chat, everyone, and we all annoy each other with it, I'm sure. There's like, I don't know how many of us are in there. I don't know, like 10 or something.
Yeah, there's a
There's
handful
a lot
of
of
us.
people in there, and the ages are from like 30s to 50s. Like,
Yeah.
all of us are in there. But all of our moms are gone. And so speaking of like community and being there for each other, it is really nice that we all still talk and have some communication, because some families just don't have that at all.
Yeah.
Like, not even at all. And our side, with our connection with our moms, I feel like that side of the family is always just really close. And
Yeah, four sisters, the four Nori girls.
I know.
Oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Their poor parents.
I know. Fran and Marge, where are you?
I know.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a lot. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
About that. That's tough stuff. And I'm sure that, more little things are going to be revealed, as time goes on and we do more episodes and everything. But it's hard to share it, so thank you.
Yeah.
I do have some additional griefy questions for you.
Oh, God.
Just different ones that I have written down, because one of the things that we're going to do this season 2, guys, is we're going to try to have at least some of the questions be the same for every guest, and it's going to be really interesting actually at the end of the season to look and see all the different responses to the same questions. I think that's going to be interesting. So what is something, Alyssa, about grief that has surprised you? Is there anything?
Yeah. I mean, it's it's obviously up and down, but yeah, one of the things that really surprised me is how random triggers are. It's like,
That's a good one.
Yeah, like you're just having a great day, and you're walking down the street, and you're going to work, and then out of nowhere, like the littlest tiniest thing will remind you of your loved one, and just kind of set you into a spiral. And it can be so silly, like my mom loved these like little apple pies. They were called Entenmann's, right? And I bought them a lot for her.
I know those.
I know. It's so silly. And like when I was really in kind of the raw grief, when it was really kind of immediate, like immediately after she passed, um, I was just like walking and grocery shopping, and I saw these little apple pies, and I was like, like cannot, like I need to get out of this aisle or I'm going to cry.
I wasn't
in
sure
the
if you were
middle.
going to say that you needed to buy them all or
No,
run away.
like I
Okay.
was like, I can't, like, why am I was like, this is too much for me. I can't see these apple pies right now. It's like, it's an apple pie and like, I'm having a great day, but like, I couldn't see the apple pie at the moment. You know, and yeah, I just think, you know, grief is it's such a shisty guy, you know, it's just like,
Sneaky.
yeah, he's sneaky, you know, you think you're doing well and some small random thing like an apple pie can really just, you know, ruin your day.
Yeah.
And,
Pies
you know,
ruin days all the time.
yeah,
I get it.
yeah. They're rude. They're rude. But, you know, and it's like now, since I'm not in that kind of like raw emotion grief, I can, you know, when I see the apple pie, I'm like, oh, my mom loved those. Maybe I'll buy those today, you know, but, you know, and you kind of transition through grief that way as well. But, yeah, just something I think the triggers still are very random and, you know, yeah, that's kind of, they surprise me all the time. They're still surprising me. So I'll let you know
Me too.
when my next random grief trigger comes up and we can talk
Yeah.
about it.
No, for sure. Me too, honestly. And you know, I try to share little random things that set me off on social media actually to just let people know that they're not alone. And like, yeah, it sounds so silly to be upset over an apple pie, like you said.
Right.
But it's not the apple pie.
Mm-mm.
It's the mom with the apple pie.
Right. It's the
You
mom
know?
that would eat the apple pie, you know?
Yeah. But those grief triggers are, I don't know, they're just out of this world. They really hurt sometimes. And I mean, I haven't figured out a way to shut them off other than just trying to talk about my grief more. Like the more I am like in line with it, the more I feel like I can control it.
Right.
But I still can't control it.
I know.
You can't control it. So it's just like, it's like a mind game that I play with myself because I really am not doing anything different.
Right.
Yeah. So Alyssa, another one. Do you have any words of advice for somebody who is grieving?
Yeah. Yeah, this one is this one is a loaded question, I personally think, because, you know, I think the most important thing is to kind of like prioritize your needs, and protect your own energy and, you know, create boundaries. The problem is like a lot of times you have no idea what you need. So, you know, I guess like the biggest advice is to just kind of like give yourself grace, give yourself leeway, um, allow yourself to reset. Like if you have a plan and you've made plans and you're, you know, walking out the door with your keys in your hands and you have a griefy moment, give yourself the grace and protect your energy and call whoever you're supposed to meet and really say like, I can't do that today and I'm so sorry, but you know, I'm not in the right mental headspace. Cause I think taking care of yourself is so important. And you know, we feel pressure and then we feel this guilt. I think you should do it, you know, take care of yourself without feeling guilty, you know, when you're going.
Right. It's not something to feel guilty about. Like it's necessary.
Yeah.
You're so true.
Yeah. And
Yes,
it's
that's
okay to
wonderful
change
advice.
your mind, you know. And if you have good people in your life, then they're going to understand, you know, that, you know, you made this plan 2 days ago and you were feeling good and now you're not feeling good. And I think that's so important, you know, when you're in those raw stages of grief. And even years after, if it's an anniversary trigger or, you know, an apple pie makes you cry, like you need to take care of yourself, you know.
For sure. No, that's wonderful advice. And it's an ongoing thing. And I loved how you were just saying like change your mind. Like
Yeah.
I love that. I try to do that too. You know, if you're not feeling up to it, don't go.
Yeah.
Like, and again, if they have an issue with that, well, then
they're not your people.
They're not your people, and they clearly don't understand you.
Yeah.
Clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Alyssa, the show that we are now both hosting is called Growing Up Grieving. And I've talked about what that means to me, a lot in season 1. And basically, it's always evolving the way that we grieve. And we kind of even just talked about that a little bit just now. So what does growth in grief mean to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think growth in grief, I think the biggest thing, it's just, trying to be healthy. I think like revisiting grief is also super important, because I think your perception of grief is, transformative as you continue to go down your path and deal with how you're feeling, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it changes.
Yeah. So. Yeah. I think revisiting it is really important because, you may have felt one way, immediately after somebody passed and then feel another way, several years after, and then be able to, look at things different. And, I think growth and grief is kind of just, revisiting it and embracing it and trying to, understand it and be healthy and be at peace,
Yeah. That's great advice.
Yeah.
I love that. That's wonderful. And we're going to grow some more this season. I know we're going to, it'll be interesting to see how we feel together when we're recording our last episode of the season. Yes! It'll be fun to look back. I love doing that. And so I think that this is a perfect transition into the next segment of the show. Don't freak out, people. You're going to hear more from Alyssa, okay, and her story and her wonderful insights and of everything. But we are going to move on to a segment called Would You Rather?
Oh, God.
Grief edition. Would you? Okay, I'm not going to do that every time. I'm sorry. That was not planned. I am crazy.
I'll dance with you.
Okay. Let me get them up because I forgot to do that.
Do I even know them? Oh, God.
No, you don't need to know them. You don't need to know them.
I'm nervous.
Okay, so we're going to do the Would You Rather, and I forgot to print it out, everyone. So, Alyssa, pick a number 1 through 10.
2.
Today's Would You Rather question. Would you rather receive a sympathy card from your dentist or have a well-meaning coworker bake you a grief-themed casserole every week for a year?
Oh my God.
If you haven't figured it out, guys, these are really silly questions.
These are funny.
Yeah. So would you rather have a sympathy card from your dentist or a well-meaning coworker bake you a grief-themed casserole every week for a year? They both sound horrible. I'm sorry.
Yeah, they're both horrible. I think I would want the sympathy card, a one and done. I can always get a new dentist, but I got to see that coworker like all the time. And
casseroles like every week for a year. That's a bit. Are they really a coworker or are they like a stalker?
I know, right? Like, I mean, I don't know what kind of casserole, or is it going to be rotated? Are we getting the same thing every week? Like,
that's true. Are they even a good cook?
Exactly.
I think that has a lot to do with it too.
Yeah.
Why don't we do one more? Would you rather? Why don't you pick another number?
All right, let's do 8.
Okay. Would you rather have to explain your grief fog every time you forget something, or just let people think you're permanently scatterbrained?
Oh, God.
That's an interesting one.
So, I feel like people think I'm scatterbrained already. So that's I feel like that's in the norm for me. Right.
Me too, yeah.
Exactly. ADHD.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like
explain your grief fog every time you forget something, just be like, oh, well, I forget because I'm grieving.
I know. Yeah. I think it
I
would.
don't know.
It would be. Yeah, you can think I'm crazy if you want. Like I forget my keys all the time. It's fine. I don't want to talk.
Yeah, I think I would probably do the same thing. A lot of these would you rathers are really random questions, but they kind of make you think and
Yeah,
kind of
they're
breaks
kind
it
of
up, and it's
fun.
fun. And so that's the whole point, is that we're trying to have fun here. And so we are an hour in, and that flew by. It flew
Woo!
by. I think we did it. Why don't we end the show with a grief win? What do you think? What do you think about a grief win? So when I say grief win, these are moments that are sometimes they're big, but I think that mostly they're really, really small moments. Like personally, small moments that like feel like huge, with us with our grief. So do you have a grief win, Alyssa, that you would like to share?
A grief win.
Yeah.
I
If not, I
mean,
can go.
yeah, I think for me, like a big grief win is just kind of coming on here, right?
That's my grief win too. Oh my god, high five!
Yeah, high five.
We're amazing cousins.
Yeah, I feel so special to be able to have these conversations with you, and I feel like I did have a lot to kind of unpack and think about. With the loss of my brother, that I have never really revisited it at this capacity as an adult, and I think that that's so important to me, and I just feel so lucky being here and being able to talk in a safe space with you, and this is out of my comfort zone, so you're my grief win today.
Oh,
I love you.
I love you too. And yeah, similar for me is just being able to be here with you, and not just being able to open up, but like talk to you, my cousin. We're family. It's really nice to have that kind of connection. And I'm just really excited for the season because I think we're going to talk about so many good things. There's just so much to talk. Yeah, so that's just my feeling of the day is very similar. Oh my god, it's like we're cousins or something.
I know. It's like we have ESPN or something. It's a Mean Girls quote, if anybody.
Yeah, I know. It's funny. It's good. I love it. All right, so that's our show for the day, everybody. If today's episode moved you, or you just really liked it, or anything about it, you like us, please share it. Share it with somebody who needs to hear it, and so that they're not alone, because that's honestly the whole point. So until next time, keep it griefy, and we'll see you. Bye everyone.